All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope all of you guys are having an incredible week. As you guys know, on Monday, we sat down with Sam Vecenie to do our contender rankings, and we went all over the place. We ended up talking for almost 3 hours. We hit like 17 different teams. Yesterday, we ran part one of that list, which included contenders 1 through 5 on my list, as well as Sam's agreements and disagreements. And then I went through the 4 teams with 31 plus wins that I don't think have a chance to win the title. So if you missed that, that's on our feed from yesterday. In today's show, we're running part 2 of that show with Sam Vecenie. We're going to be hitting my number 6 through number 13 on my contenders list, as well as Sam's agreements and disagreements. We also got into some tactical stuff, some stuff that we would potentially see in matchups should these teams make deep playoff runs. A lot of good hoops talk in there for you. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. It'd mean a lot to me if you guys would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also really helpful if you guys take a second to leave a rating and a review on that front. Don't forget about my Twitter feed at _JasonLT for the film threads that I do in the mornings, as well as show announcements. And then keep dropping mailbag questions in those YouTube comments so we can keep hitting them throughout the season. And the last but not least, before we get started, have you ever had like a bad ticket buying experience? Maybe you put the ticket in the cart and you go to check out, and then all these fees get added on. It ends up just being way more expensive than you expected. Or maybe you bought a seat and then you got to the arena and the seat wasn't what you were expecting in terms of just the quality of the seat, or maybe the process is just overly convoluted. Well, this is where I want to tell you guys about Game Time. Game Time has all-in prices to show your total up front, so you know what you're getting yourself into. You know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Then also you can see the view from your seat before you check out, so that you know exactly what to expect when you arrive to the arena. And then it's a super easy process. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And as much as we enjoy watching these games, we got like 20-something games left in the season. Get out and see your favorite team in person. Get to an NBA arena. It's always an incredibly different experience to watching at home. A lot of older veteran guys like Steph and KD and LeBron that might be gone before too long from the NBA. It'd be great to see them in person. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code HOOPS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and then redeem code HOOPS. That's HOOPS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, without any further ado, let's get to part 2 with Sam Vecenie of our contender rankings. Number 6. The Phoenix Suns, for me.
Sure. Yeah.
It's funny. I am lower on the Mavs trade deadline moves than you are, in the sense that, like, I don't necessarily, I guess you haven't actually said anything about their deadline moves, but I thought Phoenix's deadline moves were smart because they actually brought players into the equation that I could see playing significant roles. For instance, like, I think there's a case.
One player.
Well, so I think there's a universe where a KD at center lineup could have Royce O'Neal and Thaddeus Young, although he was more of a buyout. It was a buyout, but like,
no, he was a buyout,
but still,
yeah.
like, I could see, like, to me, Royce O'Neal is probably in their closing 5, which is what makes, like, whereas with the Mavs, it's like, I would probably rather have.
We'll talk about the Mavs.
Yeah,
let's
it gets a little bit tougher. So, like, I it's interesting because they were the 2 teams that I thought behaved most desperately at the deadline in terms of, like, going to make these, like, moves on the margins. 400.
Yeah. No, and behind the scenes, Phoenix was, like, really aggressive, trying to find a lot of options for
440 minutes of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant this year. 125 offensive rating, 113 defensive rating. They've held up well enough on the glass for it not to be a problem. I like the KD at center look for specific kind of like a curveball for a short stretch. I actually thought it was smart for them to go away from it against Sacramento when they won last week. I like what I'm seeing from Phoenix overall. I do get concerned, though, not to bring up the injury thing, but like Beal and Booker are both susceptible to these like soft tissue injuries, which always freak me out a little bit because, like, I think they need to be really humming on offense when they get to the postseason for this to work. And
Yes.
rhythm is going to be a huge part of that. And like Beal just went down with another hammy. And so I do get concerned about him getting back and actually getting into rhythm in time for it to matter, because things really took off for the Suns this year when Beal was consistently in the lineup. And so I do believe in that group. I actually think they're just a much better version of last year's Suns team. It's just I'm concerned about whether or not they'll be in rhythm at the right time. Where do you have Phoenix at?
I had Phoenix at 8, largely because of the injury question. Beal's continued health is concerning. Kevin Durant has a history of soft tissue injuries at this point that needs to be accounted for on some level. And Yusuf Nurkic has played at most 56 games in the previous 4 seasons. He is currently at 52. We will see if he can stay healthy for the whole way. I think Nurkic has been an utterly he has to be out there for 30 minutes plus for them, or else it gets really, really hard for them. I agree with you in terms of the KD closing at the 5 lineups from time to time can be really valuable. But in the Western Conference, where you have to deal with Karl Towns, Rudy Gobert combination in the front court, you have to deal with Nikola Jokic in the front court. I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to not have Nurkic on the court. I mean, how would you even feel about a Lakers series against the Suns if they tried to go small with KD against like Anthony Davis at the 5? Like, I think that's probably a bad idea for the Suns, because I think it'd be putting too much onto KD's shoulders just physically in terms of wear and tear over the course of a full series, in my opinion. So I really think Nurkic is essential, and I worry about his health a little bit. Beal, as you mentioned, continues to go down here and there with injuries. They've only played 440 minutes together this season. And yet, when they have been playing together, they have been phenomenal this year. Like, those lineups are fantastic. Grayson Allen this year, Grayson Allen is shooting 51, 48, 89 this season. Grayson Allen is going to get so much money this offseason that like, he's the guy that people keep not bringing up in free agency as like an option for some of these teams. Grayson Allen is having like the best like walk year marginally compared to like where everybody else was entering the season compared to where they are now in the NBA. Like, he's averaging 13 points a game on 51, 48, 89. In a role where they desperately need him night after night after night to perform and succeed. Okay, let's talk about the questions here. Like, their closing lineup, it sounds like you think, is Booker, KD, Beal, Grayson Allen, and Royce O'Neal, or Nurkic, depending on the matchup for Royce or Grayson.
Yeah, I think I'd go with Royce instead of Eric Gordon in their small ball lineups. I think that I think they will have bigger looks where they go Royce instead of Grayson too. I agree. Yusuf Nurkic, for as much as he gets criticized for his defense, like, he's had some moments this year. Like, I thought he was awesome down the stretch against Sacramento the other night. Had like several huge plays down. He's one of those guys, kind of like Jokic, where like when he's really active with his hands, especially like on the ball handler, like when he's not sitting back passively, but rather more aggressive, he can actually be pretty impactful because he's a smart player. I actually get more concerned about him against, like, you know why I think he's such a bad matchup against the Lakers is like LeBron can run pick and roll against him, whereas so many other teams can switch it. Like, he can get downhill against him.
He can't play against the Thunder, like, point blank. Like, the Thunder would just like completely cause all sorts of issues for him in space over the course of a 7-game series. But, you know, do you think that the KD, Booker, Beal combination is just good enough to beat the Thunder? Like, I think that's a completely reasonable opinion, because they actually can go to the KD at the 5 lineup against the Thunder and not get blitzed on the defensive glass. So it's the Suns are interesting. The Suns are a team that I've really come to enjoy when they've been fully healthy this season. I had the Suns below the Mavs and the at this point.
And then also the Thunder, I'm assuming, right?
I'm realizing I have the Thunder, or I have the Suns at 7.
Suns at 7. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. I was looking at NBA futures this morning. The Golden State Warriors are plus 5,500 right now on DraftKings to win the title. So if you believe in them, that's a big number. And Denver, I have Denver as my championship favorite, and they're still the second best odds on DraftKings right now at plus 450. So lots of good NBA bets to look at over the course of the end of the season. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. The crown is yours. All right, my number 7 is a team that I'm actually kind of sneaky high on, and I had to really temper myself because there was a version of this list where they were higher, and it's the New York Knicks. And Here's my reasoning. I think if a couple of things go right for them, and that's Mitchell Robinson coming back from his ankle injury, which apparently there's some optimism coming out of his camp that it's a possibility. If Mitchell Robinson can come back from his injury, if Julius Randle can come back and get in rhythm in time for the playoffs, I think they're one of the most physically imposing teams in the league. The numbers coming out of their core three are insane. 285 minutes of Randle, Brunson, and Anunoby, 129 offensive rating, 104 defensive rating, and a 56% rebound percentage. And before anybody brings up the talent stuff, I think personally Jalen Brunson is a fringe superstar type of guard. I think he is so good. I think let me put it this way. I think he's closer to like what people think Dame is than like the Donovan Mitchell tier, in my opinion. Like I think he is I think Jalen Brunson is freaking awesome. And I think if you give him a truly physically imposing team that can defend at an elite level, that can rebound at an elite level, and as long as Julius Randle doesn't piss down his leg when he gets to the playoffs, I think they have that type of potential. Am I too high on the Knicks? What do you feel about the Knicks?
The Knicks were my clear third team in the East, for sure. I had them a little bit lower in the grand scheme of the league. I had them 9th. I have a couple of teams in the West ahead of them still, but we're not too far off in terms of where we are. If you have them 7, I have them 9th. I am generally with you that this construction of this roster really accentuates Jalen Brunson and makes him to the point where, look, I would have Donovan Mitchell in this tier, but I don't mind your take there that like he is within that Lillard Mitchell grouping of players at this point. He really just kind of is. He is a fantastic player in terms of being able to get to his spots. He decelerates exceptionally well. He's constantly on balance. He has elite touch. He is a genuine 3-level scorer in a way that you need 3-level scorers to consistently keep defenders off of their toes. Now, how much do you trust him in isolation versus without a ball screen? The only reason I say that is because I don't know if they have another guy on this team that can score without a ball screen right now. That's my one concern about this. Everything is so tied to what Jalen can do offensively, being able to create separation, being able to make the offense work. What do they do if an opposing team, I'm trying to think of like in the West, for instance, right? Like if an opposing team is just like, fuck it, we're going to throw Kawhi on him and like, just go, okay, like, let's make this work. Or the Nuggets throw KCP on him and say, let's go crazy and like completely shut it down. On top of it, teams are going to attack him on defense. That's the reality. The Cavs last year had an easy spot to hide Jalen Brunson on, and Tibbs did that immaculately well. They spent time using the LeVert, Okoro, etc. grouping at the 3 where they'd space that guy into the corner using like an attacking help defender, and they spent time with Brunson using him as like a rest defender, basically to get him a blow to be able to get some like active rest on the court, basically. The Heat also really gave him a lot of options to be able to hide on in a real way. If they run into the Celtics, there isn't a place to hide. If they run into the Bucks, there are probably places to hide. I would say, like, you could hide him on Patrick Beverley and be fine. You could hide him on Andre Jackson, on Jay Crowder, whoever. But in the West, I think there are many fewer places to hide on Jalen Brunson. So I agree with you on offense. I think Brunson's a bit worse defensively than what Donovan Mitchell is, and that causes a few issues for them schematically. They are total ass kickers if they're fully healthy. OG Anunoby is a stud playoff potential player. Hasn't really shown it yet in the playoffs, but like I think that will come. I think it will happen at the highest level. Like you said, Mitchell Robinson is kind of the key for me. I love Isaiah Hartenstein. I think he is, again, another one of the most like underrated, impactful players across the entire league, but they need 48 minutes of just being like total ass kickers on the glass, not just 24, I think, to be able to make a run. Honestly, if they got placed into a Bucks series right now, I really might take them against the Bucks.
Yeah, well, to put it clearly, if they started tomorrow, the Bucks aren't sharp enough. But for the record, if they start tomorrow, the Knicks aren't healthy. So like it's tricky. But like, I look, man, like I literally sit there and I think, okay, like if they're healthy, they have such a clear top 5 in the sense that it's like literally Dante DiVincenzo has been one of the best spot up players in the league this year. And he's a good point of attack defender who brings physical ball pressure. Like that. Brunson, DiVincenzo, OG, Julius, Mitchell Robinson. That's just a really good basketball team. That's an interesting thing to put him against Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is like one of those teams that's just so far from their potential at this point. But that to me is the case. Is like the case. You know, we talked about the Suns a minute ago. If the Suns started their playoff run tomorrow, they would have to beat Denver 4 times out of 7. And then after that, they would have to turn around and beat Minnesota 4 times out of 7. And then after that, they'd have to turn around and beat Oklahoma City probably 4 times out of 7. And then after that, the Clippers. Yeah, most likely the Clippers. And then if they won that, they'd have to turn around and most likely beat Boston or somebody like that 4 times out of 7. There's just, in the Eastern Conference, to your point, they're third. Like in all likelihood, if you're ranking the teams. I think so. So like, it's really like, if the Bucks don't materialize, you physically bully the Bucks, you get it done. Then you go on and it's like, all we have to do is beat Boston and now we're in the finals. You know, it just seems like a more achievable path.
They have a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of ways to cause problems schematically from Milwaukee in that series. You could throw OG Anunoby onto Giannis. You could use Julius Randle to guard Brook Lopez, shooting in the corner, whatever you want to do, get late contests, etc. You can also then use your big Isaiah Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson onto whoever the help defender, player is. You can't do it if it's Malik Beasley out on the court, so they probably have to play Beasley in those circumstances. But if you're playing Beasley, then you have a real schematic offensive advantage on the court. So let's say it's Beasley, you put honestly, like I don't know if I would put Randall on him. They run Beasley off of a lot of actions. There are different ways schematically that like you can really cause problems for them in terms of lineup constructions, in terms of different things, because you have the Anunoby factor now, who can throw 30 minutes onto Giannis, and he won't stop Giannis, but he's strong enough, physical enough to at least
make him work,
slightly reduce Giannis's, effectiveness over the course of the series, especially when you have a help defender at the center position there waiting as well. You can just get late contests on Brook Lopez threes at that point, and you'd be pretty comfortable, I think, if you're the Knicks. the more I talk about this, the more I think I would take the Knicks in a series specifically against the Bucks right now.
I think I would too, but it's only because of the fact that like there's still so much theoretical with the Bucks. But then I feel bad saying that because like literally the entire Knicks front court is injured right now, like all three guys. So
no, I know, like it's all theoretical. Like everything about this exercise.
I do think you can run out of
like,
bodies, though. I think there could be a point where it's like, okay, we have somebody that's way too small to guard OG Anunoby on him right now. Like, I think they present. I think they're a difficult team to match up with physically. And by the way, Mitchell Robinson. We talked about the Evan Mobley stuff. Mitchell Robinson also just kicked their ass on the offensive glass in that series. Like Mitchell Robinson is a 100%. Real playoff mismatch problem for a lot of front lines in the league. I'm just really high. I'm just really high on the Knicks.
No, I'm 100% with you. And by the way, that could create a real just like possession issue because the Bucks never hit the offensive glass. Like that's your whole thing. Like they would really have to. They've been a good defensive rebounding team this year. They haven't been a great defensive rebounding team this year. They would really have to control the defensive glass in that series in order to win that series. And
if they're in rotation nonstop too, like if they're like as if they can't contain at the point of attack and Giannis and Brook are always in help, then no one's matched up on the back line.
So like thinking about it like offensively there, you put Giannis on Julius Randle, assuredly, and then you have Brook be the help man. And then what? You're then throwing like Andre Jackson, Malik Beasley, Damian Lillard on Jalen Brunson.
And Middleton's on OG, and OG's bigger and stronger than Middleton.
Yeah. They have a real look. Like again, the Bucks have the two best players in that series, in my opinion. That might be enough, but the Knicks have real schematic advantages against the Bucks in a series that are interesting.
Also, let's just call it what it is. I think Jalen Brunson's been a substantially better player this season than Dame.
I agree.
Like,
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
But yeah, at least two of the top three. But the Knicks are interesting to me. Yeah. I think they're dangerous. My number 8 is the Los Angeles Lakers, and this is my last team on the tier of teams that are missing traditional championship benchmarks, but you can see the pathway for them. The case for the Lakers is pretty simple. Like I mentioned earlier, they're one of only 5 teams in the league that definitively have 2 of the top 20 players in the NBA. They are top 10 in both half-court offense and defense. That's something that I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of with the Lakers. They are also the 3rd best clutch team in the league this year. They've been really good on both ends of the floor there. They have been like 4 different teams this year because like when they won the in-season tournament, they were like this grinded out defensive-minded team that just like strangled games into the mud and ran everything out of the post. And then all of a sudden, like now they're like this like beautiful ball movement, player movement, five out offense. They're like the best assist to turnover team in the league over the last 15 games and 5th in offensive rating, but they can't guard anybody to save their lives. And they have now with Jared Vanderbilt out, they literally don't even have a single healthy point of attack defender on the roster. So, but like the case for the Lakers is simple. Jared Vanderbilt comes back. He gets healthy. He takes primary point of attack assignments. The 5-out approach, which involves Jared Vanderbilt not standing in the corner, but rather constantly moving as a screener and as a dribble handoff guy and cutting to the basket. And basically, the Lakers had turned Jared Vanderbilt into a useful offensive player right before he got hurt. He actually had like a bunch of double-figure scoring games in a row. And then the case would be is that the 5-out offense just achieves a transcendent, like just LeBron, Anthony Davis, cutting and moving without the basketball, and Austin and D'Lo just making great decisions. That's the case for it, but I do think it's a long shot, and I thought that their inability to bring in a legitimate two-way athlete on the perimeter at the deadline was kind of the death knell of their season, but I still think they have an outside shot, and you can kind of see it, and that's why I have them at number 8. Where do you have the Lakers?
I have the Lakers right now at number 11, it looks like, which is still top half of the league, given the way their season has gone, and they are 30-26, like pretty high up, I think is reasonable to say. They're 9th in the West right now. So, to have them 11th in the league is saying a lot. It sounds like you think their closing lineup right now is Reeves, Russell, Vanderbilt, LeBron,
when
AD,
healthy.
is what
Yes.
you would go with.
When healthy.
I think you can get away with a lot of the like Vanderbilt, like cutting, moving constantly, screening, rolling, everything like that, a lot easier in the regular season than you can in the playoffs when teams will essentially just play off of him. They will put the center on him and play off of him in the playoffs. If you have a second body to be able to do so, like the Nuggets will just use Nikola Jokic like in the middle of the court and play off of him, right? The Clippers would just use, I would bet you the Clippers would put Kawhi on AD and just use Ivica Zubac like in the middle of the court as the help defender and just say, okay, Jared, run around, do your thing, like move around. That's fine. We'll just be here waiting for you at the rim, and we'll be here waiting for everybody else at the rim as well. I don't think you can close with Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's a valuable player for 20 minutes a game in the playoffs, like he's shown that before. I just don't think you can close with them. I wonder if their best closing lineup is actually the three guards, including Spencer Dinwiddie.
The case would be the fact that like you're just getting more just as just a better basketball player, right? So like whatever you're giving up in terms of Jared's height and speed and perimeter defense, you're just getting back elsewhere, right? That's the case.
Or Rui. Like maybe it's Rui if teams, if Rui continues to knock down shots from the perimeter and, teams feel like they have to guard him and Rui can match up, physically with somebody. It might be Rui actually. Like this is a wild thing to say, but like I kind of think their best lineup is going to be Reeves, Russell, Rui, LeBron,
that's your starters.
AD, and that's not, something that I'm like wildly enthused about necessarily either. Can they guard anybody at the point of attack? If they run into the Mavs, like, can they defend either of Luka or Kyrie?
No, I mean, they can't. It's like, for the record, like, what bothers me the most about it from a management perspective is this was abundantly clear as a flaw in the Nuggets series last year. Like, they didn't have, it was like, oh, we don't have anybody at the 1, 2, or 3 that has good size, good athleticism, and is a plus player on both ends of the floor. Like, they did not have a single player. They had all offseason to figure it out. They had all season to figure it out, and they just literally did not even come up with a single option. As a matter of fact, they ditched Dennis Schroeder, which, in my opinion, like if the alternative was Gabe Vincent, I'd rather have Dennis Schroeder. So like it just. I don't understand why they never addressed it, but I mean, that said, like, here's the thing. Why is it such a big deal for the Lakers and not for the Bucks? And I understand that the Bucks have a better record, but the Bucks have also played a substantially easier schedule and are playing in a conference with a lot of teams at the bottom where you can pile up some easier wins. I actually think in bigger games this year, the Lakers have actually fared about as well as Milwaukee has. So like that's the thing that would be my counter to that case is like, why are we giving Milwaukee that leeway, but not the Lakers? Like, why is it that we go like, oh, Dame and Giannis, what if they just figure it out? But we can't just say LeBron James and Anthony Davis and a bunch of offensive skill can't figure it out. You know what I mean?
Because the Bucks have Brook Lopez as an interior defender, mixed with their AD defensively in Giannis, as opposed to the Lakers who have, throw the hands up and just like question marks like across the board on the interior as a secondary defender. Vanderbilt is a fantastic defender. I don't mean to like completely disparage him. He's a better point of attack, like aggressive defender than he is like he can scramble around and move, but like he tends to be like pretty over aggressive, I think, in scramble situations and in help situations and like kind of gets lost a little bit. So like to me, that's actually the difference. It's like the backing of having Brook Lopez there in addition to their AD and Giannis. I think that they can. It's hard to say the Bucks can stand on defense when they haven't stood on defense this year for a single second of the season. But like, I do think that schematically it makes a little bit more sense for them to be able to do so. And they're just more physical. One of the reasons that I think it's absolutely insane to have the Lakers ahead of the Thunder at this point is the way to beat the Thunder is to be an absolute ass kicker going toward the rim, finishing at the basket, but also crashing the offensive glass, being aggressive that way. Do you know who the worst offensive rebounding team is in the NBA right now?
The Lakers.
The Los Angeles Lakers.
It was so they could fix the transition defense, Sam. They had a bad transition defense. They had to stop crashing.
And they have to, that's the thing that's actually a big piece of why I think that the Thunder, people bring up the defensive rebounding side of it. And maybe I assume you have the Thunder next.
I have them at 10 actually, but to me, the tiers are all kind of jammed up. But
okay, we'll talk about the Thunder when we get to the Thunder, but I'll kind of give my case on why the defensive rebounding thing is worrisome, but not a potential death knell. My worry is just purely point of attack defense with the Lakers and being able to construct two-way lineups. It's actually quite similar to the Pelicans in a lot of ways. The advantage that the Lakers have and why they should be ahead of the Pelicans, in my opinion, is that they have Anthony Davis. He is arguably the best two-way player in the league this season, and Anthony Davis should be top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year unequivocally so far. I think he has been fantastic on that end. Beyond that, LeBron has not been awesome on defense this year.
Oh, he's been bad.
I think that there have been moments where he's brought it, but he's not been great. The advanced numbers, because he pairs a lot of his minutes with AD, are pretty okay and forgiving to LeBron on that end. But generally, so I think he has not been great and attentive on that end. Austin Reeves has not been very good on defense. D'Angelo Russell has not been very good on defense. Rui is, still space cadet-y off the ball in a way that is concerning. They just don't have, Cam Reddish can't offense at a level that you need to in the playoffs. Spencer Dinwiddie, sneakily, I know that it hasn't been a great offensive season for him. I actually thought that he took on a lot of difficult assignments for Brooklyn this season. Nobody paid attention to Brooklyn because they were the most milquetoast basketball team on planet Earth prior to the deadline. But Spencer, for people who said Spencer was quiet quitting the Nets, he had to fight every night against an opposing team's good offensive player when they were running out Cam Thomas. He had to do more than what I think people gave him credit for. Now, he hasn't had a great offensive season. I'm not going to sit here and defend Spencer Dinwiddie. I do wonder if, 6'6" can at least hold up in those matchups a little bit better, certainly than Reeves and Russell have. I mean, look, it's damning with faint praise, but I think Spencer might actually be really helpful for them.
Oh, I love the pickup.
Real tangible way. Yeah,
I loved Spencer to the Lakers just because he, at the very least, for nothing, he brought in a much better athlete to the guard position than what the Lakers had. And Lakers fans are all Max Christie and Cam Reddish. They're all high on them. I think Cam Reddish is bad, and I think that Max Christie is too young. So I'm not as high on them. I will say this, because I know that you have both the Thunder and the Mavs over the Lakers in large part because they don't have guys to throw at those two perimeter options for both teams. I am not as worried about that for one very simple reason. I think LeBron James and Anthony Davis would rip through the Mavs and Thunder front lines for 7 straight games. I think they would just obliterate their front lines. I think it would be an utter physical ass kicking of the front lines in the same way that Shea and Jalen and Luka and Kyrie would kick the ass of the Laker perimeter players. And so to me, I think I think people are a little low on the LeBron AD front line as a playoff duo just in general. I think, again, you pointed it out. LeBron James in the in-season tournament was the only time he tried on defense this year. I can state that as someone who's watched the team very closely. The Lakers are a lot better than their record would indicate. As a matter of fact, they went 3-10 in the first 13 games after the in-season tournament and blew a bunch of games against atrocious teams, truly bad teams that they just won out, didn't play hard, and lost to. So like my thing is like any case for the Lakers for me falls apart when they run into teams that are big and have the advantages on the perimeter. So like for me, the Lakers, I get scared about Minnesota. I get scared about Denver. I even get scared about the Clippers a little bit because of the fact that Kawhi can bang with LeBron, and because of the fact that Zubac has always given AD issues, just in terms of like shoving him under the basket, getting offensive rebounds, he just physically overwhelms AD sometimes. So like to me, I'm way more worried about the Lakers against the big teams. Like you and I argued about this on the phone. I would pick the Lakers over the Thunder and the Mavs in a playoff series. I just think they'd obliterate them on the front line.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to the Mavs. I think the Mavs front line is a little bit better than what people think.
So
with the addition, with one particular addition. But look, I agree with you that like people are way underrating the idea of Anthony Davis and LeBron James together. There's a reason that they were as successful as they were in the in-season tournament, right? Like they can really play when they decide to turn it up for like a real, set of games. It's going to be hard. Like dealing with those two is a handful. They can really, really defend when they want to defend, and they are great offensively. Having to do it from where they're going to have to come from is my issue. Kind of similar to what you said with, was it Phoenix? I believe, no, we were talking about the Knicks in terms of like third seed or whatever, right? Like they're going to have to do it against the Timberwolves and the Gobert AD or the Gobert Towns front line. Then they're probably going to have to do it against, whoever the hell finishes 4 or 5. It could honestly be Denver in the 4 or 5 matchup. So you might have to do it against Denver again, and they have no shot against Denver, in my opinion.
I agree.
And then you might have to do it against the Clippers, where Zubac is going to go against them, right? Like coming from the 8 seed, the 7 seed is a substantial problem, I think, for the Lakers. Again and again and again, just having to get up for LeBron for 2 months straight of playoff basketball against teams where they don't have a schematic advantage because of how bad their perimeter point of attack defense is.
Totally fair. And by the way, like I was, as soon as they couldn't address that, like, it's funny. I was actually way higher on them going after Bruce Brown than DeJounte Murray this deadline. Like had they gotten Bruce Brown, I would have been all over the Lakers. Cause I just think that I'm a big believer too. This is one of my overarching basketball philosophies. Like we talked about this earlier with Jamal Murray and like winning impact. I'm a big believer in like even a limited player that is great at a thing you're bad at as a team can be monumentally important for your basketball team. It's just something I've seen time and time again. It's something that I believe very strongly in. So number 9, and this is my last tier of teams. These are all long shots to me. So these are all teams where like, I would be really surprised if they won, but they have just like specific things. Each of them have like that one big thing for me that's like, yeah, you can't write them off because of this. And number 9 for me is the Golden State Warriors. The reason is simple. You can't write them off because of Steph Curry. He's playing incredible as of late. The Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga foursome in 246 minutes this year. It has a 120 offensive rating and a 104 defensive rating. They have been bad at rebounding, but that's been kind of an issue regardless of their lineups as of late. Their main concerns, they're late in games, their offense just goes from being this like beautiful ball player movement to just Steph Curry running around chasing his own shot, which I think is, as much as I love Steph and as much as I love Steve Kerr, I just think it's bad process. I think that has actually led to diminishing returns in a lot of ways, and I think they have more options than what they've demonstrated. Also, I'm higher on their defensive issues that they've had as of late. Like their crunch time defense has been really bad, and it's cost them in a lot of these games. But I think it's schematic, not personnel based. Like they're really overhelping a lot right now. It's a major thing that I'm noticing where like if a guy has a defender, or if a guy has an offensive player on his hip and he's like tracking him and driving with him to the basket, and instead of just letting him force him into a tough contested layup at the rim or anything other than an easy kick out, they're just all converging on the basketball and giving up these wide open shots. So like, I think they can be a lot better than what they have been. It's an extreme long shot because they just don't have any offensive production outside of Steph Curry that's consistent, especially within a playoff lens. But like you can kind of see, it's like Steph Curry's top 5 player in the world. They have a ton of athleticism now that they've been going to Kuminga and Wiggins in the front line. Like that's the long shot. Where are you at with the Warriors?
So I had the Warriors at number 9. So we're not far off on that. Over the last month, the team with the 4th best net rating in the NBA, 7.7, the Golden State Warriors. They've really found something with this Jonathan Kuminga, Draymond Green front court, I think, that has really, really been impactful for them. Basically removing Kevon Looney from the lineup has been valuable. But the problem for them is that they're going to run into teams that have real bigs where they have to play Kevon Looney. And they have to play Draymond Green with Kevon Looney in all likelihood. Like you can't just run out. I think that where they have found success is in situations that probably aren't that applicable to the teams that they're going to have to play in the playoffs. If they play the Nuggets as the 7 seed, they have to play Kevon Looney 30 minutes a night or else. Like, what are you going to put Draymond Green on Nikola Jokic? Like, I love Draymond Green, but I don't feel great about that matchup. I just don't. I'm sorry. It's really hard to play 5 out against the Nuggets because the Nuggets are better than you at playing 5 out. If they play the Timberwolves, you have to play Kevon Looney, I think. Like, at the end of the day, I think that you're going to have to do that. So I worry about what the playoff schematics look like as much as anything. Like the Warriors have been great with this smaller lineup, but do you think, and this is a real question for you, do you think that this smaller lineup can find success in the playoffs consistently? Because if you look at the teams that they've beat recently, it's like 76ers. If I remember correctly, that was the game where Joel Embiid got hurt. Right. So like they blew the doors off of them, beat the Nets, beat the Hawks, beat the Grizzlies, beat the Pacers with like a reduced Tyrese Halliburton, beat the Jazz twice, lost to the Clippers. Right. Or no, they lost to the Hawks. I'm sorry. But then like lost to the Lakers, lost to the Kings, like the good teams they've played over the course of this month, for the most part, they have struggled to beat them. And I wonder if it's like a schematic thing where teams with real size that force them away from the Kuminga Draymond look can cause them real issues, and that those actual problems haven't been addressed and been fixed.
I have a feeling that some of this is regular season, success as well, stemming from like just lessons that we've learned over the years. Like to me, Jonathan Kuminga, I've been so impressed by Jonathan Kuminga as like a long-term prospect, and like he's won me over this year in a lot of ways. Like I really think defenders struggle to handle him one-on-one, which is like a legitimate thing that you can build a career off of. You know what I mean? But his jump shot after being red hot during that hot streak has gone way, way, way down. And he does struggle. Now teams are starting to throw multiple bodies at him. And this is what I've been saying over that whole stretch. I was like, okay, Jonathan Kuminga is playing really, really well, but you get to the postseason, everything is about exposing your weaknesses. They're going to find a way to, like, the big one with Kuminga is like if you throw late help after he puts the ball on the floor, he is turnover prone. Yeah. And so that's a big one. And then the other one too is just in off ball situations, you can just straight up play off of him. Like he's not a guy that you necessarily have to worry about out there. And so that puts you in a situation where you basically don't have a reliable secondary shot creator. I'm less worried about the defensive configuration as it pertains to Looney, because I think Looney's been so bad this year that whatever athletic advantages you gain in rotation by just being faster are more important than whatever size you get from Kevon Looney. I think I don't know. I don't know if it's because he's still kind of young. He's not that old. Like, I don't understand what it is with him, but he just has not been as useful this year as he was in previous years. Like, I would lean more on speed and be like, we just got to be a team that's excellent in rotation against these teams that are too big for Draymond to handle one-on-one in the front line. But like, here's the bottom line, though. As you put it, like, there's a reason why I have them in my long shot tier, why you have them at number 9, is like, there's just teams that are way better than them at the things that they do. And it's really that simple.
The more we talk through this, the more I think that like I should probably have them at 11, not 9. Like, the fact that they haven't beaten anybody during this stretch, I kind of like thought about it a little bit more toward like, they've been successful. I've really liked this group, but like, in terms of playoff success, I actually truly really think that you need size. Like, you need somebody to match up with Nikola Jokic. You need somebody to match up Karl Towns. You need somebody to match up with like anybody else that like, even I think they deal well with the Pelicans. Like, I think they deal well with Zion, but like Jonas would cause them some problems, I think, on the front line. The Jonas Zion combination would cause them some problems, I think, in the front line. I don't think they've solved it. I really don't, in terms of when teams, they have too many gaps that you can attack. I really respect how hard, Brandon Pajemski plays on the ball and like, or off the ball. And I really respect his basketball IQ. But like, he's like kind of a necessity for them as a secondary creator a lot of the time. And teams are going to attack him on the ball, like pretty regularly on defense. I don't think that they're going to find an answer defensively for this at the end of the day. And if they do find an answer for it defensively, like if Kavan can figure out whatever's going on there, and if Andrew Wiggins can come back to like this world, which he has a little bit in recent weeks. Yeah. I still think that they have too many mismatch issues on the defensive end to where teams are going to be able to take advantage of them. Like, okay, like what you would like to do against Minnesota is you'd like to play a big against Karl Towns and then have Draymond guard Rudy Gobert and then help off of Draymond, like or use Draymond as the help defender on Towns drives, on Towns post ups, force him into tough decisions and be able to attack that way. You can't really do that with like Jonathan Kuminga. You can't put him on Karl Towns. Towns will bury him on the block, which means you then have to put Draymond on Towns. And I think Draymond would annoy the shit out of Karl Towns. But like, then you're putting Rudy Gobert on, or you're putting Jonathan Kuminga on Rudy Gobert, and they'll just spam 1-5 ball screens with Mike Conley and Gobert. And for as athletic as Kuminga is, he can't out high point Gobert. And then if you do that, you're then helping off of Towns, probably with the tag defender in Draymond, in order to try and shut that down. And then you're leaving Towns open. And then you're in scramble situations where you have Anthony Edwards setting up in a scramble situation, right? Where he can attack a scramble bent defense. I think they're coming from too far away is where I'm at right now. I think the Warriors are coming from too far away from where they are to be able to really truly contend right now.
And Kuminga and Gobert opens up even more defensive rebounding issues, which has been just a huge problem. Like that dominant lineup that Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, Curry foursome, they have not rebounded well. They've been a bad defensive rebounding team. It's like you watch the Jazz game and it's like they keep getting stops, but just guys are flying in and getting rebounds over them. And then it's like they finally get a stop at the end of the Clippers game and no one boxes out Russell Westbrook and he comes flying in and to me, like I actually, again, I'm higher on their defensive potential than you are, but like the rebounding piece, I don't know that can be fixed. All right, we're going to do one more in depth and then we're going to move quick through the end. So number 10, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. So my Thunder pessimism, and I've said this a million times, and I have to say it as a disclaimer just because of the way that sometimes people act, the way that the internet is. Yes. I love everything about this Thunder team. I love Shea. I've been super high on him for a long time. Jalen Williams, was talking about him this morning. He had a couple of nasty step back threes the other night against, God, who was it? I can't even remember, but I was watching him. He's actually been the second best pull-up jump shooter in the league this year. like minimum 200 attempts. There's like 44 guys. James Harden's number 1. Jalen Williams is number 2. He's getting like 1.18 points per pull-up jump shot. It's completely outrageous. And he's like just got that in combination with real downhill force. I love Chet. I love not just how good he is now, but what his potential is and what his demeanor is like and his competitiveness. Lou Dort's one of my favorite 3-and-D players in the league. Huge Thunder fan. This is just simply based on my overarching basketball opinions, or philosophies, whatever you want to call it. In my opinion, if you are small and young, you're not going to win in the late phases of the NBA playoffs. Specifically, last year's conference finalists, the final 4 teams, all 4 were top 11 in defensive rebounding. In 2022, the Mavs, Warriors, and Heat were all top 10. The Celtics were 15th. 2021, all 4 conference finalists were all in the top 11 in defensive rebounding percentage. I think a big part of it is when you get into that phase, kind of like we saw in the Cavs-Knicks series last year, those physical advantages actually just get overemphasized when you get to that point. There's a reason why no rebounds, no rings is a saying. It's actually a big version of why I have some skepticism surrounding the Clippers. In my opinion, the Clippers are just a better version of the Thunder. I know they don't play schematically the exact same way, but in terms of the way that they're constructed as like these kind of two-way perimeter players, I just think Kawhi and Paul George are better versions of that than Shea and Jalen are, especially at this phase in their careers. So like, I really like Oklahoma City. I would be barring some sort of weird thing where like Shea decides he doesn't want to be in the Thunder anymore and demands a trade. I don't think that the Thunder are going to go through this era without winning a title. I think they're going to. I think they're too good not to. I just, to me, in a field this stacked, I would just be so surprised if this super young, super small team somehow ended up with the trophy at the end of the day. Tell me why I'm wrong, Sam.
Okay, so look, I say this as somebody who had the Thunder at like 7 or 8 or something like that, right? So I am not drastically higher on the Thunder than where you are for this season's playoffs. The highest I think you can reasonably get them right now is probably 5th or so. I think they are a total ass-kicking team on offense. And on defense, they bring some real schematic point of attack issues that cause all sorts of problems in terms of half-court execution. On top of that, they are the best transition team in the NBA. Now, I typically don't love transition basketball in the playoffs. I think it is much more difficult to execute than just being an elite level half-court execution offense. Having said that, with the Thunder, where the transition adeptness helps is if you decide that you want to try and attack the offensive glass against the Thunder and you want to go for that, they're going to kill you in transition, even in the playoffs. Like if you decide, hey, we're the Lakers, we want to crash with AD, we want to crash with really just AD, I guess LeBron as well would be your idea. If I'm the Thunder, I'm saying be my guest. We're still going to get probably 65% of those. Like even if we're the worst defensive rebounding team in the league, we'll even if we like go even worse than the worst defensive rebounding team in the league and we get 65% of the offensive or the defensive rebounds and you're crashing multiple guys, we're going to beat you in transition more than you're going to beat us on the offensive glass. So I would invite that if I'm them. Now, the question with the Lakers, the question with teams that like can really get downhill rim pressure is what will Chet look like in the playoffs? I think Chet is an outstanding competitor. I think Chet is somebody whose mentality is going to translate exceedingly well toward the playoffs. I worry a little bit in terms of foul trouble in the playoffs for Chet. If he gets into foul trouble, what is their combo breaker? What is their counter? They don't really have one? Question mark. It's going to be entirely reliant on Chet being able to play 35 minutes a night in the playoffs. And I say that thinking Chet is their third best player. but he is probably their second most important player in terms of playoff success behind Shea. Now, part of my Thunder optimism compared to your being a Thunder hater, which is what I will be referring to you as from now on, Jason. I think Shea is an absolute dude. And I think he is going to be able to wreak havoc on opposing teams. And in part, the reason for that is you have to guard them now 5 out. The big underrated unsung trade addition that a team made at the deadline, if he can be healthy, is Gordon Hayward. Because previously what teams have done to kind of gum up the works for Oklahoma City on offense is play your center on Josh Giddey and then be able to try and filter Shea toward the help in the middle and then leave Josh Giddey literally wide open from 3. That's the way that teams have had success against them this season. With Gordon Hayward, you cannot do that. He will kill you from 3. He will beat you as a shooter from distance, and he's bigger than Isaiah Joe, which was their other combo breaker, counter, whatever you want to call it. Isaiah, I think, is a smart defender, but he's somebody that you can attack a little bit too often on defense. With Hayward, I think that you're not going to be able to attack him as much, which leads to a circumstance where they can play genuine 5-out offense, force all sorts of issues as you're trying to stay in front of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is the best paint touch guy in the NBA right now. I think you would probably agree with that.
He can beat people off the dribble.
He can beat anybody in the NBA off the dribble. Then on top of it, you have Jalen Williams, who I think is still underrated league-wide. I don't think people understand what Oklahoma City has in Jalen Williams. This is not like your run-of-the-mill potential second star at some point. He is going to be an all-NBA player.
You were the one who gave me the Jimmy Butler comp, right? It was you that gave me that, right? Yes. Love that.
That is literally what I'm going to next. Yeah. He is like Jimmy Butler for this coming era. He is huge. He is physical. He's 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan. The biggest thing, though, is he's a genuine 3-level scorer. How many teams right now can you point to that have 2 legitimate elite? And I would say Jalen isn't, maybe not like elite of the elite, but he's damn close. 3-level scorers right now. I would not say Giannis is a 3-level scorer. I would not say Anthony Davis is a 3-level scorer. I would say that the Nuggets certainly have multiple 3-level scorers. I would say the Clippers have 3-level scorers.
But even then, Kawhi and Paul George don't get to the rim the way that Shea and Jalen do.
100%. That ability to constantly pressure the defense from multiple angles, I think, is enormous. You can constantly pressure the defense from multiple angles on the court from all 3 levels while having 3 other additional guys on the court that are spacing the court. I think they're actually an impossible guard in the playoffs if they don't have to play Josh Giddey.
It's totally reasonable. I loved the Gordon Hayward edition. If for nothing else, I'm just excited to watch Gordon Hayward play in big playoff games. I don't know about you, but I feel like we haven't gotten nearly enough of that, especially after what he was like in college. Specifically with Shea, you and I had an argument on the phone the other day, and I wanted to kind of get that on the record here. So basically, what I said to Sam on the phone, and
you think he's James Harden? Is where your take is.
So I use James Harden as a comp to make an example about playoff defense, but I'll accept it. So basically, this is what I said to Sam. For the record, I do not think Shea is going to be James Harden. But one of the things that happened to James Harden is he was a guy that had the basketball in his hands a lot and did a lot of attacking, specifically from the same angles on the floor, out of ball screens and in isolation. And one of the things I noticed with James Harden is he was a guy that was gifted at beating people off the dribble, but was not a supreme athlete at his position, which is what I would describe Shea. Mm-hmm. Shea, to me, is a very good athlete, but he is not Anthony Edwards. Okay, he doesn't bring incredible force to the position. He is shifty with the way that he beats people off the dribble. Amazing with change of pace and footwork and all the like kind of he's got kind of like a weird old fashioned game in a lot of ways with his ability to beat people off the dribble with hesitations and in and outs. And he's really good at protecting the basketball while making aggressive moves. But what would happen with James Harden is by game 5, by game 6, by game 7 of a series, an elite perimeter defender would see his dribble package and see his hesitation moves dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and he just wouldn't be able to get as much separation as the series progressed. All I'm saying is I am curious to see Shea in his first playoff series as a number 1 option, simply because he is a guy that relies a lot on change of pace, hesitation, type of stuff to beat people off the dribble. I'm curious to see if we see an elite perimeter defender not solve him, but figure out a way to kind of slow him down a little bit. I'm just curious to see it. I personally think that Shea will eventually solve that himself in his career, even if he does encounter that problem. I just think he's way better than I think he will be way better than James Harden ever was. But I just think, and that almost feels mean to say with how good James Harden was at his prime, but I want to say I believe in Shea long term. I'm just curious to see if there will be an adjustment period with him as it pertains to playoff basketball.
Here's my counter to that. James Harden never had a mid-range game that was nearly the level that Shea's mid-range game is. Shea is shooting something like 52 to 53%. From between 10 and 23 feet right now. So even if you do stay in front of him, where Harden struggled was deciding, okay, I'm just going to step back into the mid-range and find a way into that shot. He had to get all the way to the rim. He had to rely on fouls, right? Shea has the body mechanics and that shiftiness to be able to stop and pop in the mid-range and be able to just shoot over the top of a tough. He can create high-ish, not super high, but like high-ish efficiency looks from the mid-range in a way that James Harden really couldn't at the end of the day. And I think that it's much harder to sit on Shea's moves in that way, particularly knowing that with Harden, it was, okay, I either need to sit on the step back or I need to be ready to stop him at the rim, and we need to have second body coming over. With Shea, it's I have to be available for the step back 3. I have to be available basically at every single step along the line toward him driving to the rim. I have to be ready that he's going to stop and pop ahead of me. And I think that makes it a lot more difficult to guard him than what it was to guard James in the playoffs at the end of the day, when you had 7 games to adjust, throw different looks at him, throw different counters at him. And on top of it, seriously, like Jalen Williams is waiting on the second side once the defense is bent, and he can score from all 3 levels too. He's a 50, I think he's shooting like 54, 45, 82 or something right now. So like he's a 180 shooter on the other side, just in a different, mechanical way that he's going about it in terms of the numbers. So, man, I think this is a really good team, dude. I think that it really does. I think your points are entirely valid about what do they look like in terms of the physicality. If Chet can't stay on the floor, they have a real chance to lose in the first round. That is a fact of the matter. If he proves that he can stay on the floor, I think they can make the finals. Like, to me, the swing is all him. And I don't know the answer to that yet. And I don't think anybody does, in terms of the way that like his game will be officiated as much as anything. Like, I trust the person, like the human being, to bring it. I'm just really interested to see the way he's officiated in the playoffs.
I'm excited to see what happens. To be clear, I'm rooting for them. This is not a negative like Thunder type of take. It's just I think this can work to my detriment sometimes, but I lean heavily on my basketball philosophies, and they just kind of land into some of those boxes. So I lied. I do want to do a little bit of a deeper dive on this particular team, my number 11, which is the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm assuming the front court player you're really high on is Daniel Gafford. I like Daniel Gafford. I think he falls a little bit into the like, I think he's better than this player for the record, but to me, he falls a little bit into the Montrezl Harrell type of tier where like he's an incredible roll man who finishes on catching, rolling to the rim really well, but I get concerned about him as a pick and roll defender. In particular,
yeah, that I think is reasonable.
And to the point that I was trying to make about the Suns earlier, like there's a case to be made that Derek Lively is actually their best option at center. There's a case to be made that Josh Green is actually a better, option for them to use as kind of like a perimeter versatile forward than a PJ Washington, even though he's undersized. There's a case to be made that some of the guys they brought back in the deadline aren't necessarily even in their closing five. I am curious. I hate that our only film. I wanted to watch film, and it's like the only film we get is the damn Spurs game, which just they're so easy to guard because of their lack of legitimate ball handling. But I have them as my long shots for one very simple reason. And I actually had a question earlier. Someone gave me 3 teams, and I want to say it was like the Pelicans, the Mavs, and then I can't remember who the last team was, but I said the Mavs have the best chance to win out of that group because to me, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic are just 2 of the best half-court shot creators in the playoffs that you could have. And so if they can find a way to defend and compete on the glass well enough, and they've been a bad defensive rebounding team this year as well, but if they can find a way to contend in those areas, I just think it's foolish to count those guys out. And that's why I have them as long shots. But you're way higher on the Mavs, so make the case.
They will enter every series with a reasonable case that they have the best player in the series outside of Denver, I think. I would take Nikola Jokic over all of these guys, but like, if you were drafting playoff games and playoff lineups, I might take Luka third. Like I really might, given what he has been able to do in the playoffs. He has been unstoppable every time that he has hit the highest level of NBA caliber competition. Now you look at the schematics around it. I actually really like the way that this roster is built from that perspective. I wouldn't have given up a first round pick for PJ Washington, but he does create some flexibility for them lineup wise that I think is intriguing for what I'll talk about momentarily. They now just have a lot of different bodies that they can throw out there. They have Tim Hardaway Jr. if you want like the high volume 3-point scorer. They have Josh Green, who I think is a really interesting body that they can throw out there athletically on defense, who I don't know if you can leave him open from 3 anymore. That was kind of what I thought you would do in a playoff.
That's what it was 2 years ago.
But like he's been consistent the last like year and a half to where like I kind of think you might not be able to like leave him totally open. I really loved the minutes that Dante Exum gave them. We'll see what happens with Dante. He has the knee injury. He hasn't played in like 3 or 4 weeks, it feels like now. If he's there, I think that he gives them another option. Then in the front court, I agree with you that in the playoffs that Derek Lively, I think, is probably their best option, right? Because you can do multiple things with him in ball screens at the end of the day. Whereas with Gafford, you really have to play drop. You really have to fight over the top. And their guards, Luka and Kyrie, are not necessarily built to fight over the top. If you are a team that has 2 creators that you can trust, you'll have, Josh Green, whoever, guard at the point of attack, right? Dante Exum as well. Derek Jones Jr. potentially for minutes as well. But if you have the second creator that you trust to be able to get real opportunities, that's where you make Luka and Kyrie fight over the top in Gafford screens, and that's probably going to lead to open opportunities and looks. So I'm with you. I think it's probably Lively that's going to have to play, but they have 48 minutes now if they want it of elite level rim protection in Lively and Gafford. That's the difference between Gafford and Trez, in my opinion. Gafford is at least like a very good rim protector.
Yeah, he's got more length.
He contests. He has more length and he contests everything. Like he often to his detriment in terms of defensive rebounding. Like he chases everything in terms of contesting at the basket. So teams are going to miss against them. And I think it's actually a little bit easier for him to chase everything when you have Luka crashing in to clean up on the defensive glass because of how good of a defensive rebounder Luka is. Now, like you still need to get a body on guys. You still need to be able to create things that way. But Luka is so good in the playoffs. Kyrie is also incredible in the playoffs. And I think that his season has really gone under the radar because he's missed so many games already to where he's not going to be eligible for all NBA. Kyrie right now is averaging 26 on 49, 41, 88.
He's so good.
And nobody is talking
He's so
about
good.
him. He has like a 4.5 to 1 assist. He has like a 4 to 1 assist turnover ratio right now. Like Kyrie has been unbelievable this season. Like to a ridiculous degree. I think there's like almost a case where if you're the Suns, would you rather have Luka and Kyrie or Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, given how good Luka has been this season?
Man, that's a tough question. I've it's always annoyed me with all the conversation surrounding Kyrie Irving that like he's awesome at basketball isn't brought up more. because
he is incredible.
He's incredible. And like I do think a lot of people galaxy brained that situation in the sense that like the COVID stuff, totally understand why everyone was frustrated. That was super annoying. The year before when he just left his family or left the team to go be with his family or whatever the hell he was doing, totally understand. What he did to Cleveland, totally understand. What he did to Boston, totally understand. What happened at the end of Brooklyn was super obvious. He had a falling out with the front office and he wanted a new deal. That was what he was trying to do. So like I was pretty certain that he would be focused when he was in Dallas for that specific reason. And when he's in a situation where the contract isn't hanging over his head and I have a feeling that at least within the context of this season that was never going to be an issue and he's been awesome. I get a little worried about Dallas with who their best five is. So like if I'm Dallas, obviously we talked about Derek Lively as the 5. To me, I kind of lean Josh Green for more physical matchups, maybe a Tim Hardaway Jr. against teams where you really need more shooting. But that 4 spot is the interesting one to me. Would you rather go with like a guy like Derek Jones Jr., who's like a really solid perimeter defender who's actually been a decent kind of like weak side kind of slasher off the wing and has done some good stuff for them offensively? Or would you go with PJ Washington at the 4 there?
It's matchup dependent and it's dependent on how serious PJ like takes defensive attention to detail, because that's always been the issue with him in Charlotte. It's just like the attention to detail, the transition defense, the willingness to like consistently fight like game in, game out. He's a very skilled, the answer should be PJ. Like very
That's
clearly.
what the team wants, I'm assuming, right?
It's what the team wants, and it's what I would want. It's what I think everybody in the league should want. PJ needs to prove that it can be PJ, in my opinion. If he really, it's up to PJ Washington if he is their closing 4, or frankly, another situation that was very useful for Charlotte in the past when PJ was in his second season and was like a little bit more engaged was playing PJ at the 5. This is kind of the other thing that I think is a little bit interesting about Dallas. What their moves did at the deadline is it allowed them to play big with Lively and Gafford for 48 minutes at the 5 spot, or it allowed them to go small. You can downsize and you can go like Maxi Kleba, PJ Washington at the 4 or 5, and you can still have like requisite size, intelligence out there with Maxi. Hopefully Maxi knocks down threes, and hopefully Maxi like stays healthy. He's had all sorts of issues with that, obviously over the course of the last couple of years, but you have a lot of different front court lineup variations to where if you need to switch ball screens and shut down things, you can go PJ and Maxi at the 4 and the 5. If you want to play drop or something like that, PJ is not going to be good at drop, but you can have Maxi rotating over from the weak side and at least be like a presence there as a good, intelligent, tall, high-end defender. And then you go 5 out around Luka. Luka likes having the lob threat. He likes having the downhill body that can also like Gortat screen for him as he's like navigating the paint and everything. But like their optionality in the front court, like some of these other teams, I think they don't have enough options. Like Phoenix does not have enough options around their stars to be able to get the most out of their stars if something goes haywire, right? Oklahoma City, to an extent, they fixed it with Hayward a little bit, but largely they don't have enough optionality behind Chet if something was to go wrong, or like if they were counting on Josh Giddey to play like 25 minutes a game in the playoffs, right? Dallas to me actually has optionality because they have two-way players. PJ is an entirely theoretical two-way player, in my opinion, but there's a chance that he could be that. He's shown the wherewithal to do it, especially in on-ball settings in the past. Josh Green can be a two-way player. If you get a hot shooting night from Derrick Jones Jr., he could be a two-way player for a night. Dante Exum has been like a pretty solid two-way player throughout the course of the season. And then you have Gafford and Lively, both of whom are two-way players in the context of what Dallas asks them to do within their offense, being a screen roll rim run guys. Whereas these other teams, I think, are inflexible. I actually think Dallas is a little bit more flexible in how they can surround their stars with talent and let those guys be great.
I wonder if you could run some like Josh Green, PJ Washington, Kleba front court looks where you do more switching too. That's always been a big one for me, that defensive versatility piece. And I will say I have been really impressed by the job that front office has done since last year, massively increasing the athletic profile of the team. Because like they were not athletic last year. And now it's like between Derrick Jones Jr., Josh Green, I think is a really good athlete at the position, but even Tim Hardaway, for all of his flaws, he can move, Maxi Kleba is a very mobile, big guy. PJ Washington, very mobile. Derek Lively, very mobile. Daniel Gafford, very mobile. Like they all of a sudden have a lot of, to your point, it's a lot of guys who theoretically could be good defensively. And that's what kind of gets you to the situation where you can kind of see a path, which is like, as long as Jason Kidd can kind of touch the right notes about who those other three guys are, depending on the matchup, as long as Luka and Kyrie bring the requisite superstar shot creation, you have a chance to beat really anybody. You've definitely raised my opinion of the Mavs through this conversation, but I'm not surprised you've done that before. Let's go quickly through these last bits of our.
Hold on real quick to finish Dallas. Where do you think I have Dallas ranked right now in this thing?
I'm going to guess that you have them at 6 behind Milwaukee.
Yeah, I have them 5.
5
behind Milwaukee.
5.
I have them ahead of Minnesota.
Wow.
I think that they cause real schematic problems for Minnesota in terms of, you throw Jaden McDaniels on Luka, probably that's your goal, but okay, then you're going to force Anthony Edwards to guard Kyrie for minutes upon minutes upon minutes in that series. And that feels like a real issue. And then they can throw multiple big bodies out there at Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert if they want to.
Next 2 weeks, Phoenix, Indy, Cleveland, and Boston on Dallas's schedule. So we're going to learn a lot. One other thing with Dallas that's made them impossible for me to evaluate, they've had 16 different guys start games from this year. They've had 11 different guys start at least 5 games for them this year. So like it's been really difficult for me to get a read on the team just because they've had constant guys in and out of the lineup. You make some really good points about the matchup with Minnesota in particular. You know, what's interesting too, last thing I'll say about it, you had talked about like the Lakers coming from the 7 seed and I, in general, don't think there's an easy matchup anywhere in the West from the standpoint of like let's say you're the 1 seed.
Yeah.
If you're the 1 seed, let's say that the Timberwolves run away with it, they get the 1 seed. Like you're probably going to have to face Golden State or the Lakers in the first round. Like that's not an easy matchup, you know, like you're not going into,
it's not easy, but
you're not going into that matchup
like
you're not going into that matchup like it's easy. Okay, so you win. You play the winner of Denver Phoenix, you know, and then like if you win that, you play the winner of OKC, the Clippers. So like I don't really look at seeding as important. It's more just the home court advantage piece, I think, is a big differentiator. But yeah, like I agree with you. Like the Mavs are going to present some real matchup problems for teams just with the sheer amount of looks that they can go with. That's a really interesting take. I at number 12 had the Miami Heat. I love the Miami Heat, but once again, I think they're a great upset candidate for teams that are flawed. I think they're a good championship, like security station where like if you don't get through Miami, you're clearly not a championship contender anyway, because like they'll just expose you for the shit you're bad at. I love the DeLon Wright pickup. I think that's a guy that can help them. I do think they'll get more out of Terry Rozier, God willing, if his knee can get right. I do think they'll get more out of him than what they've gotten. But I do think there's a little bit of a good stats, bad team thing going on with Terry Rozier, at least as an offensive shot creator, which I think you've seen some of the early returns of this year with Miami. I just don't think they have the firepower, but I do think they've got the capability of upsetting anybody just simply on the strength of Spoelstra, Jimmy Bam, and some of the backcourt athleticism that they've added.
Yeah, so I also have the Heat and am ready for people to come back to this in 2 months and just be like, wow,
they did it again.
They did it again. Look, if they play the Bucks in a 2-7 match, or like they're not going to finish 7th, but like if they finish, if the Bucks fall to the 4 seed and they're the 5 seed or something like that, and they play the Bucks in the first round, and that's Spoelstra against Doc Rivers in that like messy Bucks team, I have zero
that would be the best outcome.
The
that would be the peak outcome for this season.
I really like kind of want it to happen, if I'm being honest. And look, I know they're in 7th in the East right now, so like I should say that they could finish 7th in the East, I guess. But like, I think they finish ahead of, man, Indiana could get healthy and like go on a bit of a run. They're only 2.5 games back of Philadelphia right now. We'll see what Philadelphia ends up being coming down the stretch here. If they get to the 6 and Milwaukee ends up the 3 or something like that, that could be just like really, really fun.
Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing. Number 13, I had the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's all theoretical based on like, what if Embiid comes back and just kicks everyone's ass? Like that's always like an outcome that you have to write in.
Where would you rank them? Where would you rank them if Joel was healthy?
I think, if I remember correctly, right around the time that the Denver game went down, I think I had them like 5th, if I remember correctly. Again, my take on Embiid is really simple. I think if he stays healthy, and I mean in the long run, that he will have a breakthrough playoff run. I think he's too talented not to.
Yeah.
It's just a question of when he could figure those things out. And I do think health has played a role. I think it's been a combination of him leaning a little bit too much on the jump shot in postseason settings, and then and him not being able to hit it when he gets there. And then the health, I think, has been a legitimate issue for him. But in terms of the Sixers overall, I look at it like I do think that Tyrese Maxey, it's a lot to ask for him to be the second best player on a championship team in this phase of his career. And I run into a little bit of like do they have enough firepower type of discussion? Will they be able to weather a Joel Embiid clunker, in a big moment that, is something that he's has the potential to kind of deal with? And it really, ever since Jimmy Butler's been out of the equation, I haven't felt like they've had that type of guy. You know what I mean? And so I'm high on the Sixers in the long run. I thought that Daryl Morey did a really nice job with the James Harden trade. I was actually surprised with how much he got back. Not just in usable players, but also in just draft compensation. And like, I thought Daryl Morey did a really good job there. I think they're poised for another big move to kind of address some of their firepower issues in the long run. But like, to me, even if they were fully healthy, I would have had them pretty far down on this list. But under the circumstances, the idea of Embiid coming back before the end of the year, just getting in rhythm in time to kick everybody's butt just felt like a long shot to me.
How many playoff games do you think Tyrese Maxey has played so far in his career?
Gosh, I'm going to guess. Was he even in the rotation 2 years ago? He was. Okay, I'm going to say 25.
Yeah, he's played 35 playoff games already. Like, so he's played like half a season in the playoffs. Like, I wonder if we might be looking and underrating like his comfort level in the playoffs already. Obviously, like up until last season, it was a different role, but you know what? Each of the last 2 seasons where he's played 40 minutes a night, he's averaged 21 points a game in the playoffs. And his that second year, that 2022 year, he shot 48, 38, 94 on 21 points a night in the playoffs. I think Tyrese might be fine in the playoffs is what I'm getting at here. If he's able to not be the number one, if he's able to be the number two behind Joel. I love the Buddy Hield addition for them if Joel's healthy. It creates so many problems for opposing teams on the backside of those empty side pick and roll actions they like to run with Tyrese. If you just put Buddy in the corner of those actions, most teams like to pre-rotate from the corner in order to help on the empty side roll. If you put him in the corner, your team can't pre-rotate. That means you're pre-rotating from the wing, which means that then you're able to kick to the wing in all likelihood. And then you have either the corner man lifting, which is Buddy's guy, or you have top of the key that's helping, which is just an easy reversal. And then you're basically back into the action again with one more pass, right? So like it flows into itself really well. And that's even just like not accounting for, you could do some fucking wild stuff with like Joel and Buddy and like 5-2 ball screen, like slip actions, right? You could do some crazy stuff with like Maxi Hield speed actions. Like you could run some like 21 actions where like Buddy is, you're running like empty side with Buddy, like ghosting in,
just like
flying
Tyrese
up to
did.
the wing. Like you could just do so much. You could do exactly right. You could do so much with them. I think that Buddy is a real schematic addition for them in a playoff setting, in my opinion, even with the defensive liabilities that he brings to the table. I just don't trust that Joel's going to be healthy enough to see any of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm really high on Tyrese Maxey. I think he's probably the best combination of speed and shooting ability that we have in the league right now. I'm a huge believer in him in the long run. His efficiency did tank quite a bit last year. That was the one thing that kind of got me a little bit worried about him. And like we've seen even just for stretches this year where he can go cold. I'm a big believer in Tyrese. I think it's a lot to ask for a guy in his first year being the number one. And by the way, to me, number two option doesn't mean as much when you factor in the fact that he's going to get the number one perimeter defender. Like he's going to get the best perimeter defender that the other team has to offer. Again, just huge believer in Tyrese Maxey long run, but like, guys, just think of it like this. He's Tyler Herro's age. He's Jordan Poole's age. Like he's young. He's got, there's something to be said about like, if there's been a theme that you guys have picked up from me on this today's show, it's like Jason hates the youth, but I am a believer in Tyrese in the long run. I am a believer that Joel Embiid will eventually break through. Just doesn't feel like this is going to be the year. So, is there anybody, that's the end of my list. Is there any team that you had on your list that I didn't have?
No, the end of my list too.
The teams we discussed earlier.
We talked about the Cavs at the top. Yeah, we've talked to everybody. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, 2.5 hours later, poor Paul. He's gonna have to.
This will be.
He's gonna have to cut this into multiple episodes for sure.
Multiple episodes. It's fine.
But
we're good.
I appreciate. Yeah, we shouldn't even thank each other for this. We should just thank Paul for listening to us for the last 2.5 hours.
Shout out Paul, baby.
Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Sam, can you please shout out your work? Sam does amazing work for The Athletic.
Go to the Game Theory podcast over on YouTube. Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. That's all we got. Nothing too crazy.
Let's how about you and I plan on doing a playoff preview at some point when we get closer? Is that something? Because I love talking matchups with you. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, of course, cool. Man. Anytime.
All right, guys. As always, we appreciate you for supporting the show. I am taking every minute off until Warriors Lakers on Thursday night. I will see you guys for an instant reaction then. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you then.